Hey guys, it's Ty from the Tabletop Engineers here to bring you a new FX tutorial for your tabletop gaming. This tutorial is going to be a universal wall torch for any 3D printable dungeon tile. Just like any crafting project, you're going to need some supplies, so here's what you need. You're going to need a soldering iron, some solder, helping hands, and some soldering flux. For the light, we use a 0603 pre-soldered yellow LED. To power the LEDs, we use a CR2032 battery. You'll need some cutting utensil like pliers. You'll also need 1/8 and 3/16 drill bits as well as a drill. To make the connectors for the battery, we use sewing needles because they're easy to find and they're cheap. And of course, we can't do any crafting project without super glue and Instacure. The first thing you're going to need to do is use your 1/8 drill bit and drill a hole anywhere that you want the torch to be mounted in your tile. So it's important we use the 1/8 because that's the size that we need for the mount for the torch. So you see the torch fits in there perfectly. Now I know we're good to go. So next part, we're going to need the bigger drill bit, and we're going to drill a hole right in the center underneath where we drilled our last hole. We need this hole to be nice and big because sometimes it's hard to feed the wiring through the bottom hole. Make sure you clean up the hole nice and clean, empty out any junk that might be left over in there. Most of the time you're going to miss all of the infill, so just make sure you have grid infill or lines as the infill. That way you've got an empty space there inside the wall for the wiring. Again, clean it out, make sure it's all nice and hollow on the inside, no extra scraps or anything like that, and we're ready to insert the LED. So you're going to take your 0602 LED and insert it into the torch. It's important that this LED doesn't fall out while you're working on it. So you're going to want to make sure to add a little super glue to the wiring, not to the LED itself. I'd like to use a little Insta-Set spray, which you can kind of see off camera there. I sprayed it. Curl these wires down and twist the ends. It just makes it so much easier to feed into the wall. So I got pretty lucky here. Sometimes it's a little harder to get it just right. I managed to get it on the first shot. But feed your wires through the wall. And now we can go ahead and install the torch. The first thing we're going to want to do once we get to this point is just test everything, make sure your LED isn't bad. So go ahead and hook up a battery and just test and make sure all of the wiring is good. Once you see the light turn on, you're okay to go ahead and glue in the torch from this point. So at this point we're going to use a little dab of super glue, and then we're going to use the Instacure or Insta-Set to set it up nice and fast. I don't mind a little blob there, it doesn't bother me at all, but if you have like one of those personalities where you want it to be perfect, you can take a little more effort. Next, we're going to grab a sewing needle, put it in our hands, and pre-tin the eyelet of the sewing needle. This will make it a lot easier for us to solder in our wiring. So here I'm putting in the positive terminal. Pretty straightforward, just go ahead and make sure you solder it, use some flux. And repeat this step for the negative terminal on the LED. So I have needles on the positive and negatives. Next, we're going to need to insert them into the battery holder. You notice at the top there's a little positive symbol on the battery holder. It's just a small reminder for you which goes where. So go ahead and insert your needles. And first I like to just do a temporary test just to make sure my tolerances are good. So I go ahead and stick in my battery just to make sure that everything's working properly. Next, we're going to use some pliers or side cutters, whatever you want to use, to trim the needles. Now those break off, they actually don't cut, they just break, so it's really easy to do. I go ahead and insert my positive terminal. We're going to throw some glue on it to make sure it doesn't move on me while I insert the rest. Hit it with a little Insta-Set. I like to wait a couple minutes for it to cure up. And I try to throw a little glue on both sides. I definitely don't want these falling out. Little LED or the little batteries aren't enough to really cause a fire, but you don't want any hazards there. So here's a little quick test. Battery works, terminal works, everything's good to go. So our next process is to grab the base and insert the battery holder into the base, as well as glue our tile on. So here you can see that the base has, or that the battery holder has a couple of little tabs on it, and those tabs fit perfectly into the base supplied with the kit. Now we don't want to glue the wires down because the battery itself, the battery holder itself actually flexes so you can get the battery in and out. Make sure you glue the tile base to the tile itself. And now you're pretty much done. That's it. Here's how you swap the battery out though. You can tilt the battery out, the holder out, swap the battery, put it back in, push it all back. That's why we don't want to glue those wires down. We need a little flexibility on those wires. Now that that's all done, you're ready to go. These tile bases do hold clips as well as magnets, and you can see here the clips still work even with the battery holder. I throw a little paint on the torch holder. You'll need a few coats to get it right, but that's about it. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.